Most people will never build real wealth from investing, not because the market is unfair, not because they started too late, not because they did not have enough capital, because they never had a framework. Welcome to the ProfitByFriday.com podcast, where we replace guessing with process, emotion with discipline, and noise with one clear idea every single week. Now, let us get into it. Wall Street expected $1.89. Kaiser Aluminum reported $3.74, nearly double, on a company most investors had never heard of. Today, we run Kaiser Aluminum through the clear framework: 5 pillars, 1 score, 1 verdict, no noise. Marcus was sitting at his desk in Chicago on a Tuesday night in April, scrolling through his watch list. He had been tracking 3 tech stocks and a biotech play he had read about on a finance forum. None of them had moved. All of them had stories, compelling stories, the kind you can explain at a dinner party without anyone's eyes glazing over. What he did not have on his list was an aluminum manufacturer from Franklin, Tennessee. Because why would he? Aluminum is aluminum, a commodity, cyclical, boring. Not the kind of stock a smart investor spends time on when there is AI infrastructure and weight loss drugs and semiconductor plays sitting right there in front of him. The same week Marcus ignored Kaiser Aluminum reported earnings. Wall Street had modeled $1.89 per share. The company reported $3.74, a beat of nearly 98%. Net sales up 42%. Net income nearly tripled. The stock jumped. Marcus had skipped it because the story did not sound interesting enough to tell. That is the trap most retail investors never escape. They filter by story quality instead of by evidence. They want something they can explain, not something they can score. The clear framework does not care about the story, it reads the evidence. And in Kaiser Aluminum, the evidence had been building for months before the earnings hit. Let us walk through it. The C in clear stands for catalyst. The question is simple: why this business and why now? Not a vague tailwind, not a general trend, a specific, named reason the business is generating more revenue today than it was 12 months ago. For Kaiser Aluminum, the catalyst is 2 things firing at the same time. First, defense and space. Kaiser Aluminum makes specialty aluminum plate and shapes used in aerospace structures, military vehicles, armor systems, and space applications. These are not commodity aluminum products. They are highly engineered, tight-tolerance certified materials that most aluminum producers cannot make. Defense spending is accelerating across NATO countries and the United States. Space is expanding. Demand is at levels the company's own management described as 4 times what they had originally expected. Second, packaging. Kaiser Aluminum has been investing heavily in coated aluminum products for beverage and food packaging. The 4th coating line came online in 2026. Packaging conversion revenue in the first quarter jumped 24% year over year. This is not a short-cycle event. This is a capacity investment now generating returns. 2 separate tailwinds, 2 separate revenue streams, both accelerating at the same time. Catalyst pillar scores 16 out of 20. The L in clear stands for leadership. Does this business lead its market or follow it? Kaiser Aluminum is not the largest aluminum company in the world. It does not make commodity aluminum ingots or standard extrusions that any smelter can produce. It operates in the specialty segment, where the barriers to entry are certification timelines, engineering relationships, and production capability that takes years to build. Aerospace plate is the clearest example. An aircraft manufacturer does not switch aluminum plate suppliers because a cheaper option appeared. The certification process alone takes years. The liability exposure from material failure is enormous. Once Kaiser Aluminum is qualified on a program, they stay qualified. That is pricing power. That is business grip. The company has also been gaining market share as import competition from offshore producers declined. Lead times doubled in the quarter, meaning demand is running ahead of available supply. That is not a commodity dynamic. That is a specialty manufacturer with constrained supply and rising demand. Leadership pillar scores 16 out of 20. The E in clear stands for earnings. This is where most investors stop reading too early or too late. In the first quarter of 2026, Kaiser Aluminum reported net sales of $1.1 billion. Earnings per share came in at $3.74 against a Wall Street estimate of $1.89. That is not a small beat. That is a business performing at a fundamentally different level than the models had assumed. Net income nearly tripled year over year. Adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization reached a record. Management raised their full-year outlook, now expecting adjusted earnings before interest interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization to grow between 20 and 30% versus the prior year. The earnings picture is not just one strong quarter. This is a fifth consecutive quarter where Kaiser Aluminum came in ahead of internal expectations. The trajectory is consistent and accelerating. Earnings pillar scores 16 out of 20. The A in clear stands for accumulation. What is institutional money actually doing with this stock? Accumulation is not about whether a stock is going up. It is about whether the volume pattern suggests professional buyers are quietly building positions before the price reflects what they know. For Kaiser Aluminum, the institutional footprint expanded meaningfully in the months before and after the earnings beat. The stock had been ignored, underowned, and undercovered. That creates the conditions where a strong earnings report produces an outsized move, because the price had not yet reflected the business improvement. There is a note of caution here. Insiders sold into the strength following the earnings release. The framework accounts for this. Insider selling after a large price move is not necessarily a red flag. Insiders sell for many reasons. The question is whether institutional accumulation is continuing beneath that surface noise. The evidence says it is. Accumulation pillar scores 14 out of 20. The R in clear stands for risk and reward. This is where the framework makes a practical judgment about whether the setup makes sense right now. Kaiser Aluminum is a cyclical business. Aluminum demand is tied to industrial activity, aerospace build rates, and consumer packaging. All three are positive today. The risk is that any one of them softens faster than expected. The high capital expenditure program the company is running also means free cash flow is constrained while investments complete. The risk and reward pillar evaluates whether the entry structure makes sense given those risks. The technical setup at the time of scoring showed a stock breaking out of a multi-month base on rising volume following the earnings catalyst. The prior week's low governs the stop level. The measured move provides the target. The math on the trade is constructive. Risk and reward pillar scores 18 out of 20. 5 pillars, 5 scores. The clear framework scores Kaiser Aluminum at 80 out of 100. High conviction. This is not a recommendation to buy or sell Kaiser Aluminum. The clear framework scores business quality and setup structure. It does not predict price. What it does is separate the stocks worth watching from the thousands that are not. Kaiser Aluminum passed the bar. The lesson from Kaiser Aluminum is not about aluminum. It is about the filter. Marcus ignored this stock because the story did not sound interesting enough. The framework found it because the evidence was there. A nearly 100% earnings beat does not come from nowhere. The defense demand was building. The packaging investment was completing. The lead times were extending. Every signal was visible before the price moved. If you are reading those signals through a structured process, you see it. If you are reading headlines, you miss it. The amateur waits for a stock to become famous before he buys it. The investor uses a framework to find it before anyone is watching. Visit ProfitByFriday.com today. Subscribe free to the Friday Flash, where you will receive one stock fully evaluated through the clear framework every Friday, so that you know everything about the company before you decide to invest. No noise, no hype, just the analysis that matters. We trade for cash flow. We invest boring to build legacy. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.